Every day, there's some startling new statistic about opiate use. The state police just released a new overdose tally, 185 deaths since November 1st. But that number does not include Boston, Springfield, or Worcester, the state's biggest cities. We've been following the heroin epidemic in our in-depth focus reports, and tonight we hear from Boston Police Commissioner Bill Evans. He's seen how destructive addiction can be for families like Pat Burns. Pat told us last week about his 40-year-old son, Jamie, who recently died of an overdose after getting hooked on heroin in college.
It was easier to believe that it was an experiment and that it was a whim and not that it was a lifestyle. The misnomer of getting high is an outright lie. These kids aren't high. They're not happy. It's not a party.
Pat Byrne now carries the overdose antidote Narcan with him at all times, and Boston's police commissioner says his force will be trained to use it as well. I sat down with Bill Evans yesterday and started by asking how he plans to implement this new protocol.
We're going to bring the training right to the roll calls, where the supervisors and the patrolmen are going to be trained in its use. We all realize the importance of this drug, and we're going to have it available to every one of our officers. So if they run into someone who's in desperate need of this drug, we're going to make sure the officers are well trained in using it. And I think it's going to make a huge difference. But again, I think it shows Mayor Walsh's commitment to dealing with the scourge of heroin that just seems to be sweeping not only Boston and Massachusetts but across the country.
Yeah, it's been used as sort of an experiment with just a handful of police departments in the state. So is this something, though, that should be a statewide?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've seen firsthand how well it's worked, but I think every department across the state should have it readily available.
This big drug kingpin in Mexico was just picked up and arrested and possibly will be extradited here. But what's going to make a big dent in your mind in terms of the trafficking? It just seems that the supply is endless.
Yeah, and unfortunately it is. I think, we got that drug, but there'll be someone who just takes his place. Those cartels, those big, kingpin, they're such an organization that someone's always ready to take their place. All we can do is attack what's going on, obviously, here in the city. Last week, we got 1.5 kilos of cocaine, and we grabbed the guy in a motor vehicle stop with $54,000 in his car. We're continuing out there trying to attack not only the open source drug dealing that's going on in the corners, but also the major operations, at least here in the city. But, I'm just concerned. I know medical marijuana is coming on board pretty soon, but I worry about all the public safety issues surrounding that. I know Mayor Walsh is very concerned about it being a gateway drug, as well as I am.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Are you concerned about the fact that marijuana is going to be legal? There are going to be 35 clinics around the area, and so you think it is? It's a gateway to the next thing?
Yeah, I think it is, but it's also going to pose quite a bit of issues for us. People are going to go in with phony back problems and every ailment possible, and they're going to get these prescriptions, and they're going to go in and purchase this marijuana, and you can get up to 2 months' supply of this drug. And so, we're going to see people out there getting it and selling it on the corners. We're going to see people getting robbed as they leave after having their 2 months' supply. So I have a lot of security issues, not only around the location of the facility, but as people, walk away with their supply, and also people, selling their supply.
As you know, some corners of the world and even people in law enforcement believe that maybe the time has come just to legalize the whole kit and caboodle. Cocaine, heroin, where do you stand on that?
I'm not for legalization of drugs at all. We see what heroin's doing to our community. If we make that readily available, you can imagine everybody will be walking around like zombies. They really will. And I think we're seeing that now, the dangers of drug. I think the OxyContin, the heroin on the street, it's killing a lot of young people. So I'm not for legalization at all, and especially even with marijuana.
Guns. Mayor Walsh wants to have this buyback program. We've tried it in the past. Police departments tried it with limited success. Does that make a dent, really, in the problematic guns on the street?
I think it does. I mean, last gun back we did, I think we got over 1,000 guns off the street. And those are 1,000 less guns that can end up in the wrong hands. We've seen what happened on Morton Street when the 14-year-old had access to a gun, playing with it, and he killed his 9-year-old brother. That's the type of stuff we want to prevent. You know, yesterday on Lyndhurst Street in Dorchester, someone who legally possessed 4 guns had his house broken into, and 4 guns were taken. So there's way too many guns, both legally owned and illegally owned, in the city that if we can get our hands on those for a certain amount, then I think the program will be effective. And again, this is only a small portion of what our strategy is going to be. We're hoping for an anonymous tip line. We're pulling that together right now, where we'll go after more of the street guns, where if people know someone on the street who's carrying and they give us a tip, whether they text us or phone it, we're going to have a bank on board with us where they'll be able to go into that bank and collect a substantial reward. So we know the gun buyback in itself is not, you're not going to have the streetwise kids turning their guns, but we're hoping the tip line will do it.
In the case of the 14-year-old that shot the 9-year-old, the Pena family, do you know where that gun came from? Was it a legal gun?
No, it clearly wasn't a legal gun. I was still trying to find out where the 14-year-old got it, but, you know.
But it was in the house.
No one in that house had a license to carry. That gun was not supposed to be in that house.
People see things, they hear things, they know things.
Right.
There are a lot of unsolved cases that could be solved if people spoke up.
Right. And that's what we're hoping for. We're looking for more cooperation from the community. You know, we're not the enemy out there. We need this to be a cohesive operation where we're all working together. You know, Lipstate's a great organization. They're going to do a public relations where they're going to be working with the MBTA and do some billboards about females being involved in the violence. I think that's really a big issue for us. I think over the last couple of weeks, we had an incident last week where an individual was selling drugs down at Boylston and Washington, down the downtown crossing area. And when we were approaching, he handed the gun off to the young 18-year-old girl. He was 28. So she ends up getting locked up for holding the gun. And a week before that, we stopped a girl who was holding a silver revolver fully loaded in her underwear. So we're realizing a lot of the gang kids out there are using a lot of these girls on the street. And unfortunately, we're seeing one of the homicides we've had this year was in Mattapan, where a young lady was shot who had a young baby. But we see a lot of young females out there, either through their own choice or being forced to run with a lot of these kids who, you know, are involved in the gun violence. So this is a great effort on the behalf of Lipstick to try to encourage girls not to be pressured into running with kids who intimidate them into carrying these guns.
You got handed a lot of cases that were unsolved. One was a shooting involving 4 women, I think it was August of 2012. 3 of them died, 1 of them lived. I mean, somebody must know who shot those girls. Right. That's another example. What about the one who's living? She doesn't have any idea?
Right. I mean, that's the problem we have. I mean, we always say, you know, we'll give anyone the protection they need if they come forward. I think sometimes they feel intimidated. But, you know, whether we have to relocate them to another state, we'll put them in a witness protection program, but it's hard convincing people that if they come forward with information. But, you know, I think through our community policing effort, we've come a long way in building trust with the community, and I think people just have to be reassured out there that, you know, they can rely on us, and if they give us information, they're not going to get retribution for doing that.
Lalissa DeSissa is the 2013 Boston Marathon champion.
You ran the marathon last year.
Yes.
Take me back to that day for you.
I went up there, I ran the race. It was a beautiful day, feeling great, coming down Boylston Street. You know, my wife Terry and my son Will were in the grandstands. I was waving to them. And, you know, like any other day, a special day in Boston, the marathon. I was in the Boston Athletic Club, in the hot tub, believe it or not, when one of my officers, Cecil Jones, ran in and told me a couple bombs have gone up at the finish line. And I'm like, that can't be, no way. The whole way up there, all I could think of, this can't be happening here. And unfortunately, when I got out of my car and walked on Boylston Street, it's a sight that I'll never forget. You know, seeing the young victims lying on the street, seeing shop windows blown out, barriers blown apart, baby carriage just abandoned. It was something that you would never, ever picture or even guess would happen in the city of Boston.
What did you think?
Well, you know, I think I was initially stunned. I think sort of dumbfounded, saying, geez, where do we go from here? Boston Marathon, city of Boston, this isn't supposed to happen here. So, you know, it took me a while for that all to settle in.
What's it going to be like this year? Because I can remember I was at the finish line last year early in the morning, and then I came back after the incident, but I was thinking, wow, this feels like overkill. Yeah. You know, Homeland Security and FBI and everybody with a badge and tape and everything. I mean, how much more security can you have?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, since April 15th, I think since 9/11, everybody's become security conscious. We never, in our worst dreams, thought something like this could happen in the city of Boston into the marathon. But, you know, we've been working on a plan for about the last 4 or 5 months to make this the great event it always is. You know, we're going to have a lot of uniformed officers out there, but we're more importantly going to have a lot of undercover officers mixed in the crowd. We're going to have a lot more bomb dogs out there, and we're going to have security checkpoints where people are going to have to pass through. But I just want to assure people it's not going to be intimidating. It's not going to look like an armed camp. You know, we'll have some cameras, more cameras out there, but we realize this is a special day in the city, and I don't want people to be intimidated by the presence of officers with, you know, assault rifles or, you know, the sort of the Ninja Turtle gear that you recognize. I want this to be as low-key, and so the spirit of the marathon isn't sort of defeated by this heavy presence of police. But believe me, we're going to have plenty undercovers and a lot of visibility out there, but not overwhelming. So it intimidates people.
So you mentioned your brother did this job for 10 years. Can you see yourself doing it that long?
I think when my brother got it, he was a lot younger than me. I think he was probably 43 years old. And, you know, but, you know, five, who knows? I enjoy this job. And if I'm here 10 years, I'll do it for 10 years. But I know right now it's a big, you know, it's big on my family. I'm out a lot more than I want to be. You know, some nights I'm not home, 9, 10. I'm getting more calls at 1, 2 in the morning. To do it 10 years, I think would be unfair to my family. I'm at the stage of my career where, you know, maybe in 5 years, knock on wood, if I last that long, you know, it will be time to spend more time with my family. Again, if I'm 33 years on, after 38 years, I think I've had a good run.
So I got to ask you, where'd you get the name Mouse?
Well, it's sort of comical. My father, I loved my dad. He brought it. Unfortunately, my mom died when I was 3. My father had to bring up 6 boys, and he was left with 6 young blonde boys under the age of 11 when my mother died. And I was the baby, and I was small for my age, and so he's the one who nicknamed me Mouse. And he always said there's a mouse in every house, and as my brothers brought me up, and then my father passed away when I was 14, his main saying to my brothers always was, is make sure you take care of the mouse. And so, you know, the only regret I have, honestly, looking back at how well I've done and how well my brother Paul has done, is that my father wasn't around. You know, he was very proud of his boys. I had 2 brothers who went on to be chiefs in the fire department, and my brother Tom, who's a boss on Edison. I just wish he was around to see how well his boys turned out.